So in my 15 plus years of working with students in student ministry, I get this question asked often. A lot of times it pertains to relationships. Sometimes it pertains to parental relationships. Sometimes it's romantic relationships. That's the majority of the time. It's when a guy or a girl has a boyfriend or girlfriend. They're like, hey, so I was wondering, how far is too far? You know, you've probably asked that question in your mind before. You've probably had somebody ask you that question. Or if you have toddlers, you know, you set up the boundaries. You set the line, you draw it in the sand right here. And most of the time, toddlers will tiptoe as close as they can to that line without crossing over it. Unless you've got one of those toddlers that just is like, nah, forget it. I'm going past that line and I'm running full speed like I'm breaking the ribbon at the end of a race. If that's you, I am sorry for you, but we all have those lines. We set them up in different areas of our lives. Sometimes it's the music we listen to. Sometimes it's workplace lines that we kind of set up. For us at our house, one of the lines that we have set up pertains to scary movies. Now, let me clarify this first. I am not a scary movie type of guy. That's not my forte. If I have to pick a movie, it's gonna be a Tommy Boy type slapstick, goofy comedy. That's me. Or an action movie, something like that. Scary movies are like way, way down on my list. I'd rather watch a Disney princess movie than sit and watch scary movies. But my wife loves, for some reason, loves scary movies. And she's forever asking me. And every now and then I'll give in and I'll find a scary movie. We'll find something to watch. And a few weeks ago, she was begging, she was asking to watch a scary movie, and I'm just like, fine, whatever, let's just find something on Netflix, we'll start it, we'll watch it. Now, before we get going with the movie, you know, we have this line set up when it comes to scary movies. First of all, I'm a big baby when it comes to scary movies, but especially when it starts involving like demon-possessed kids and exorcisms and demonic type stuff like that. Like, that's just like nightmares for me and for Rachel. And so we kind of have that line set up and drawn. And we start watching this movie. We've not watched it before. We've never seen it, haven't really heard anything about it. It was just trending on Netflix, so we clicked on it. And we're about an hour and 45 minutes into this movie. Like, I'm invested. Like, I know these characters and I'm having all these feelings about this movie, and I know who's the good guy and who's the bad guy and what needs to happen. And then all of a sudden, it just turns really quick. And the kid becomes this like spawn of Satan, like just instantly happens. And Rachel is the one who just sits up real quick and she's like, turn it off, we're done. Turn off the movie, we are done. This demonic kid, scary stuff, let's shut it off. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I've got an hour and 45 minutes invested in this movie. There's 7 minutes left and you want me to cut it off now? Like, what about all the stuff, the scary stuff that led up to it? Now you want to cut this off. Now, I was a little frustrated and wasn't really on board with that decision, but looking back on it, was it a wise decision? Probably so, because had we finished the movie, I probably would have been waking up having night terrors, and Rachel would have to then get up out of bed and make me some soup or something, or whatever you do for a scared little kid in the middle of the night, right? So it was probably the wise decision. It was probably the right decision. But oftentimes we find ourselves in these situations in life where we're trying to figure out how far is too far, where's the line, what's right, what's wrong, and is it wise? What are some of the questions that we ask ourselves when we find ourselves in those situations of is it right, is it wise? Let's join Chris for part 4 of the series, No Regerts.
If you are like the majority of people who drive a car, and you probably are, in this regard, you probably drive about as close to the speed limit. Truth be known, you probably drive just enough above the speed limit to keep you somewhat safe, but even more, as fast as you can without being introduced to one of our local police officers and them wanting to get your name and autograph. Most of us do that. We drive up to or just above however much will keep us out of trouble. That's the line. Matter of fact, in life, there is a line in everything of how far can I go and be okay? How far can I go and not get in trouble? How far can I go and not get caught? How far can I go and not be unhealthy? We have it. We don't know what it is. It's sometimes kind of an imaginary. Sometimes it floats a little bit from person to person, but we have those things. It is part of the human condition. Maybe some of human nature would say that we try to snuggle up as close to that line as we can. Matter of fact, here's some things that maybe would be points for us when you're trying to get there. That line between legal and illegal, maybe that's part of your driving. Maybe another one would be this, between responsible and irresponsible. That sometimes responsible is exhausting. And sometimes you go, I just wish I could find a place where I could just be. Remember when you were young and you were just irresponsible? I could be that. Maybe a third one would be between moral and immoral. I don't want to cross the line. People who are dating, people in their business practices, people in so many different areas of life. It's like, where is that line? And it's so hard to find because it seems like everything in life should be black and white, but sometimes finding where the line is difficult. Or maybe between this, what is ethical and unethical. But here's the truth. It is human nature that we want to snuggle up as closely as we can to whatever that line is. And sometimes we even allow ourselves to go just a little bit over it to test the waters. That is the way the human condition typically reacts. Now, fueling all of that, the thing that drives that within us, matter of fact, we say it this way, fueling this behavior and is a flirtation with disaster, and that comes as an assumption that underneath the surface of everything are a series of beliefs. And maybe you won't admit to having these. We all have a little bit of it, or we wonder about it. Let me give you the first one. If it's not wrong, then it must be all right. There's just that assumption. You know, you just go, well, what's up with that? Oh, well, it must be fine. Maybe another one would be this. If it's not illegal, it must be permissible. If you want to do another one, we could say this way, if it's not immoral, then it's acceptable. It's got to be one or the other, right? It's in one category. One more, if it's not over the line, then it's fine. We're not even sure where the line is, but we know there's a line. We know we like to get up as close to the line or a little bit over the line as possible, and then it starts with some assumptions that just says, if it's not, then it is. All of that works together. It is how many of us live. Let me just say this. These are pretty low standards, and it's not the way we allow anyone else in our life to live. Let me just tell you, if you're a parent, you never look at it this way with your kids. You never say, well, listen, sweetheart, I know you're going out on a date, and here's what I want you to know. As long as it's not wrong, it's all right, and if you're not sure, just assume the best. With the people you love, with your little brother, your little sister, with the people in your life that you care about or you're responsible for, we seldom say, listen, if it's not illegal, it's permissible, then go for it. We don't do that. Matter of fact, we want people to hold themselves to a high standard when they deal with us. We want the assumption to be, I want you to do what's best for not only you, but what's best for me as well. And so all of these kind of lower the line that we want to snuggle up to. So for the last 3 weeks, we have been in a series called No Regerts, No Regrets. And the whole question has been, is there a way that we can live from this point forward? We can live a life without needing do-overs, without having regrets. Is there a way that we can live a life that we're proud of, that we find peace and joy in? Is there a life that's fulfilling enough that I don't have to say I'm sorry all the time? That I don't constantly have to hide at least pieces of it? To do that, we started with a premise, and the premise is this, that good questions often carry far more weight than good answers. Now, I know that's not a church way of thinking, because at church it's all about the answer. Just give me the answer. Guys like me who stand up, we're answer givers. We think we are, at least. Let me just tell you what you should do. But in real life, you recognize that sometimes the answers are far more complicated than just the Sunday school answer we were given. And so what we've said is that good questions eat good answers for breakfast. That knowing good questions, and what we said is we want to give you 5 questions that if you will walk through in your life will help you build a regret-proofed life. One of the things we said is to ask these, you've got to pause for a second. You've got to slow down your game, slow your roll, pump your brakes, whatever, push pause long enough to ask. By the way, one of the hardest things to do in life is that, in the middle of whatever is going on, to slow down long enough to think through. That's usually where regrets start, is we're in a hurry. Let me give you the first question we asked 2 weeks ago, and it simply is what we call the integrity question. The integrity question, simply put, is this: am I being honest with me? We said the easiest person to fool in the world is the one that you see in the mirror. And man, that holds true. While this question is easy to say, easy to ask, easy to write, easy to talk about, it is very difficult to answer, because if I'm not being honest with me, often I'm the last one who knows. Matter of fact, we said, and it just sounds silly, we said, don't just say, am I being honest with me, but am I being honest with me really? Dig in, slow down, assess a little bit deeper. Second week, last week, Jeremy walked us through, and this is such a great question. We called it the legacy question. The legacy question says this: what story am I wanting to tell in my life? What is the chapters I'm wanting to write? What are the chapters I'm wanting to write? For a lot of us, here's the problem. If you look in your past, we can't undo what has been done, but we can make decisions about the future. But already some of us have some areas where, listen, if you're single, the person I date, I may not tell them that part of my story for a while. I want to make sure I've got them kind of reeled in a little bit before I blow that one out there. Maybe it's this. Wouldn't it be great if you could write a story that you never have to apologize for, that you never have to hide that piece in the dark, that you never say, listen, I just assume my kids, my wife, my husband, I would just assume my parents never understand what that spring break, whatever it is, wouldn't it be great? It says, what is the story I want told, or I'm wanting to tell about my own life? By the way, if you don't know what it is that you're wanting to tell with your life, then you will not land where you intend to land. Nobody accidentally ends up great in life. Nobody ends up with a great story they just stumbled into. You can stumble into anything bad, but you will choose to live a great life. So if you don't know the answer to this, and I know some of us have been walking through this in our groups, it's been some amazing discussions. What is the story I'm trying to tell? Boy, for me and my group this week, we sat down, and as I was just sharing that, I recognized that's an answer that I've had for a few years. There's some areas I go, I don't know if I'm living up to it. And other areas I go, man, that has adjusted my thinking so many ways. It is such a helpful, powerful question, the legacy question. Today, we want to ask the third of those questions. We call it the maturity question. Before we go on with that piece, if you remember, we've been reading a verse, Proverbs chapter 27, verse 12. If we're kind of memorizing it, we'll just go over it so many times. Hopefully it'll stick in your mind. It says this: the prudent or the wise, the prudent see danger and take refuge. Smart people, wise people, prudent people, mature people, maybe we would say this week. Mature people, when they see danger coming, they take refuge. There's some people, when they see danger, they accelerate. You call those, well, let me tell you what you call them, but the simple keep going and suffer for it. It is people who won't take the time to recognize what is coming their way, or when they see it, they just accelerate toward it. Usually, we refer to those people. Simple is not stupid. Simple is often just unskilled in their thinking. Maybe another word would be unwise. You know what? Some of the smartest people I know aren't very wise. And some of the wisest people I know aren't incredibly smart. They might not pass the test in writing, but they pass so many tests in life because they're wise people. It's not about a knowledge base. So the prudent or the wise see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and suffer for it. The unwise, the unskilled, the people who won't take time to pump the brakes before they move forward, they usually suffer harm, and as a result, the worst case scenario is not only do you suffer harm, but what we've learned that our decisions affect you, and then they're going to affect those you love the most. They're going to affect those who love you the most. The things that hurts me most about my bad decisions is not that I made them, although that breaks my heart. What really hurts me is that often my bad decisions hurt the people I care about most. That's why these questions are so important. Well, we said today's question is the maturity question. To understand the maturity question, first, let's understand the immaturity question. Here's the immaturity question, and by the way, we've all asked it. And it's not taking a shot at you saying you're immature. It's saying the question is immature. Don't get mad at me. The immaturity question is this: what's wrong with that? Hey, I want you to go do that. By the way, when you were growing up, this is classic. Parents say, I want you to go do that. Or even worse, don't do that. Well, what's wrong with that? Don't wear that. What's wrong with this? Don't go there. What's wrong with them? Whatever, your question in life, this is one of the earliest questions that come about. If you have a 2-year-old, hey, don't jump on the couch. What's wrong with that? Well, if you jump on the couch, you could fall and break your leg. If you fall and break your leg, I got to take you to the emergency room. It's going to cost me a lot of money and a lot of time. I'm not that concerned about your leg, but I don't want to have to do all that. That's the truth. But typically, the question is, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? We'll get an answer, and it might even be a good answer. It is just a shallow answer. The immaturity question is what's wrong with that? By the way, if you make your decisions based on this question, and most of us do, as long as we can answer this and be okay, we can move on. It is kind of lowest common denominator thinking. It is what people that aren't the people we want to become often ask. The immaturity question is what's wrong with that? But the maturity question flips to this: what is the wise thing to do? Now, when I was growing up, everything was black and white. When we have young children, one of the ways that we teach them, because scientists say that the young person's brain, the pre-adolescent brain, doesn't have the ability to deal in concept. And so we deal in black and white. This is right, this is wrong. Do not lie, tell the truth. Do not steal because it's sin. It's wrong. It's an absolute. As we go through life, one of the things we recognize is everything is not as simple. There are certainly obvious things. Do not steal is bad, or stealing is bad. Do not lie, lying is bad. But we also begin to recognize that there are a lot of things that aren't so black and white. As a matter of fact, most of the decisions that I've made in my life that are significant, life-changing decisions haven't been between, like, I've got to make a living, and so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to either cook my own meth and sell it to mainly teenagers, younger teenagers at that, or I'm going to be a missionary and go to Africa and share God's good news. That's not been my life choices, one or the other. I'm either going to go rob the old people or I'm going to care for the homeless. That's not how my life typically works out. Most of the decisions I have in life aren't so stark black and white. They are much more in the middle. And the question of is it right or wrong doesn't get me to an answer. I tell you one that will serve you. It will help you with what's right and wrong, but it goes so much further. And the question is, what is the wise thing to do? If we're going to get to that point, we have to begin to understand this one thing. And this one is one that's been ringing in my ears for the last couple of weeks. A decision can be not wrong and unwise at the same time. If your question is what's wrong with that, well, you could say there's nothing that's wrong with that, but just because it's not wrong doesn't mean it's the wise thing to do. As a matter of fact, a lot of our greatest regrets in life have been a someone or a something that weren't necessarily wrong, they just weren't right. And see, there's all kinds of assumptions that we mentioned before that come in. If it's not wrong, it must be right, but you and I both know that's not true. There are things that aren't wrong that aren't best. And that's the way we want to live our life. That's why we call it the maturity question, probably because it takes a lot of maturity to be willing to ask it and answer it honestly. What is the wise thing to do? Now, we've read from Proverbs 27. Let me give you a verse that's kind of like a first cousin to Proverbs 27 in the New Testament. It's in Ephesians chapter 5. You're going to love this one. If you're new to the Bible, here's one that you might want to stick on your refrigerator, put it on your rearview mirror or wherever you put it, on your bathroom mirror so you can read it. It says this: be very careful. By the way, anytime the Bible starts out with be careful and then adds a be very careful, it's about to say something really important. Be very careful then how you live. Don't just let the current push you. Be careful how you live. It goes on, not as unwise, but as wise. We read a verse earlier. It said the prudent do this, but the simple do this. This one picks up right where that leaves off. It says, I want you to live not as simple or unwise, but as prudent or wise. I want you to live a different kind of life, not because we want you to be a freak, but because we want you to experience the best parts of life. We want you to experience a life with no regrets. Now, if that's what you want out of life, then this verse is for you. So be very careful as you read it. And then it begins to unfold it. It says, making the most of every opportunity. I want you to take advantage of the days that you're given now. I think this is the toughest thing when it comes to decision making. as I've talked with people the last 3 weeks, that we often think the big crucial decisions in life are where our life is shaped the most. It's where do I go to school? What is my major? What is my career? Who is my spouse? How many kids do we have? It's those, when do I retire? Where do I live? It's, it's maybe 10 big decisions. I'm just going to tell you, there are 10 little decisions around every one of those big decisions. And the truth is, the little decisions that surround the big decisions determine your life, because they really determine what your big decision is. It's hard if we're not wise in our decision making around small things to all of a sudden say, stop the presses, now I'm going to do it the right way. Every now and then I have couples who come to me who aren't married and they've been together a long time, and they say, hey, we want to get married. And I go, well, why? Tell me why you want to get married if you've been together a long time, and why do you want it done? Why are you talking to a pastor about those things? And they say, we really want to do this right. We want to do it the right way. We want God to honor what we've done, and we want to honor God in what we're doing. And what they're saying is, we've started something and we've recognized that maybe there is a better way. And it's not that what we're doing, we can't change where we've come from, but what we want to do is build it on a good foundation from here forward. That's what wise people do. This is one of those, to recognize that the big decisions in my life will be based on a series of smaller decisions, and if we make them wisely, the big decisions will come really naturally. The good news is you're not sure what all the big decisions are going to be, but when you get there, you'll be set up to win. This says make the most of every opportunity, and then it gives us this little phrase at the end, because the days are evil. That just sounds perilous or negative, and I don't think it's just meant to be that. It's just saying the days are evil. The gravitational pull of life is always going to be for more, not less. It's always going to be for now, not later. It just says, listen, if you're not careful, you will be sucked into the stream of life, and it will consume you, and your hopes and dreams, your wishes for the future, the story you're wanting to write will be hard to recognize unless you do this. Listen, be very careful to be not unwise but wise, and the reason is because the days are evil, and if you don't make the most of these opportunities, you don't accidentally end up with a great life. Have I said that enough times? Do you believe that? Hey, some of you that are a little further along in life, do you tell your kids, hey, just wait, you can figure it out later? Or do you say, listen, don't do what I've done, or don't do what your older brother did, or don't do what Aunt Crazy Woman did? Don't do that, because now you have so much past to have to deal with. Well, when we get to this question, what is the wise thing to do, we phrase it in three different frames, or three different filters. As you understand those, they'll help make more sense. The first one is this: what is the wise thing to do in light of my past experiences? What is the wise thing to do sounds super spiritual and super smart, but it's a little more complicated, and when you get into it, you'll recognize that. But when you put this filter on first, in light of my past experiences, the truth is, I think the statement is made, he who does not recognize the past will repeat the past. If you don't recognize where you've come from, you'll find yourself repeating the same things you didn't mean to, didn't want to, and wish you hadn't have done. And so in light of my past experiences, by the way, that means this question will look different for you than it does for me. In light of my past experiences, there may be things that would be perfectly wise that for you would be incredibly unwise. That's why a good question is so much stronger than just a good answer, because a good answer does not flex with the differences in life. So in light of my past experiences, hey, lean on that. If you don't want to repeat the past, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. If you want your life to change in light of my past experiences, what is the wise thing to do? Second filter that we put in front of that one is this one: in light of my current circumstances. In light of what I'm facing today, my challenges, my life experience, where I've come from is one thing, but what am I facing today? What is the wise thing to do when I weigh all of those things in? That sounds really simple, but you've got a lot going on. Matter of fact, you've got a lot going on that you didn't expect you were going to have going on. Most of our apologies in life happen when we are faced with a current circumstance and we react to it. And then later, instead of responding, we react, and then later we go back and say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. My current circumstances kind of got the best of me, and I said or did or went or bought or ate or drank or snorted or smoked or whatever your story is. My current circumstances often get the best of me. So, in light of my past experiences, what is the wise thing to do in light of my current circumstances? And then the third one ties in with last week a little bit. In light of my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing to do in light of my future hopes and dreams? And once again, if you don't have future hopes and dreams, this is a starting place for you. When it comes to hopes and dreams, I'll just tell you this, life is tough. Hopes and dreams in the future, the deck is stacked against you. The reality that we live in today, it's not easy on your dreams. Some of you figured out. You go, all I wanted was just this in life. And then life has knocked you around a little bit. The person you thought you could trust, you couldn't. The person you thought that was forever turned out not to be. The situation, the job that you thought was going to be my future, it died. It went away. They said no. They didn't go where you're wanting to go. The career path you've chosen, the whole market dried up. I don't know what it is for you, but I will tell you this, life beats the heck out of dreams. We all experience it. That doesn't mean you're cynical or jaded. It means you are probably bruised. And if you live very long, you're going to find that life sucks the dreams out of you. So it's so important that we understand, what are my hopes and dreams for my future, and am I making choices that are wise based on that? Now let me just tell you, I've been dealing with these three questions. This question in particular, what is the wise thing to do based on my past, my present circumstances, and my future hopes and dreams for more than 2 decades, really even longer than that. Some of you that are watching this right now, there are some of you I know that are watching today because I've asked you to watch. You remember when you and I sat down and you were going through something and I said, hey, I don't know the answers. And if you're looking for a really smart, I'm not really smart, but I can give you something to filter some questions through based on your past experiences. What is the wise thing to do when you were making decisions? Some of you are like nodding, going, yes, I've heard you say this 30 times. Because I lean on these questions all the time. Where I live right now is based on the answers to these questions. What I do for a living, what we've chosen and where we live has been based on these very questions. I filter through them over and over in my life. I've got a friend who a few years ago was facing some big decisions in their life. Matter of fact, I remember they called me over to their apartment, sat down with he and his wife, and he had a job opportunity that was going to pay a lot. And I sat down with him and he said, first words is, I already know what you're going to say. Well, that makes me want to punch people in the face, but I don't, because that's not the wise thing to do based on past, present, and future. Unwise when he said it. And I'm like, you don't know what I'm going to say. Most of the time, I don't even know what I'm going to say. So there's no way you could. And he's like, I know you're a preacher and I know what preachers are going to say. And his job opportunity was to be a bartender at kind of this high-end place, and it was going to pay him a bunch. And he said, here's the other thing, I'm really good at that. So I know what you're going to say. You're going to say that's wrong. There's everything wrong. Wrong environment, wrong. And I said, well, I'll promise you this. I'm not going to tell you that's wrong. Now, some of you are already upset with me because you go, well, you should have told him it was wrong. But I'm just going to tell you that great questions eat great answers for breakfast, and I believe it so much that I actually practice it. And I said, hey, how about this? I don't give you any advice for what you ought to do, but I will give you some questions to ask based on your past experiences. Is that the wise thing for you to do? And then I explained for a minute and said, listen, if you don't understand your past and don't recognize it, you'll repeat your past. So same thing I just talked to you about. Stop. And he's sitting there and he's like, And then based on your present life circumstances, is that the why? Not is it right or wrong? Quit asking that, because we're going to cover that with these 3 questions, but we're going to cover so much more based on your current circumstances. Is it the wise thing to do? And then let me throw one more in. Based on your future hopes and dreams, do you believe this decision, that is the wise thing for you to do? Well, there were things to weigh in. He needed to provide for his family. He had prayed that God would give him opportunities, and this would do that. And I get through and say, based on your future hopes and dreams. So that's what I would encourage you guys. I'll leave. You guys sit and talk about that. I'd really love for you to pray through that and decide what is the wise thing based on your past, present, and your future. And then just let me know, man. I'm for you, whatever you choose. And I get ready to kind of wrap up. And he goes, no, we've already decided. I'm like, well, you haven't even discussed it. And she's sitting over there and she goes, oh, yeah, we know. And I'm like, well, do you want to share? Is that just a secret? He goes, oh, yeah, that makes it obvious. Yeah, it's a horrible choice for us. I'm like, well, how could you do that? You decided before I was through talking, which is probably true for most people in everything in life. And he goes, well, based on my past experiences, man, I've had struggles with alcohol in my life. Almost everything bad I've ever done. Here's the statement. I've got a firstborn son that doesn't live with us. Alcohol could have been his name, because it's how I got into that situation. I have had more problems as a result of that based on my past experience. That would be a stupid thing to do. It would be totally unwise. I'm like, well, yeah, my current circumstances, I've got a family and kids and being gone late at night, and that environment is probably not what I want my kids to come see where I'm working, and I want them to be encouraged by it. And I'm not saying everybody in life is this way, but my current circumstance, that doesn't seem, and my future hopes and dreams are so far removed from that. That would be taking a step backwards in some of my hopes and dreams and who I'm trying to become. So there, it's obvious. And I'm like, well, okay, I was glad to help. I didn't even get a glass of tea out of the deal, you know? But for them, it became so obvious. In my life, years ago, decades ago, my wife and I had kind of built some debt in our life. Part of it was some health expenses that we didn't expect to build it. Some of it were some bad purchases. Some of it was some desperation for some things in life, but we had built up some debt. It was overwhelming to us, and we made a decision. First time in our lives, we did this horrible thing. It's a 4-letter word that has more than 4 letters. We decided to build a budget. And we sat down, and it was it was horrible because we have very different ways of thinking of spending and thinking of money. And we sat down and we built a budget. And then for really a year and a half, we just did the painful side of getting out of debt. We quit eating out very much, and we quit buying clothes as much, and we didn't go on a vacation. And you know what we did? We took an extra part-time job. We did all of those things, and we started and paid off some small ones, and then debt snowballed that. For all of you Dave Ramsey fans, this is before him, but other people thought before he was around, they still had thoughts. We debt snowballed our way into paying off a little one, then the next one, the next one. We got out of debt. One of our goals was that whatever God wanted for our life, we wanted to be available to do it. We never wanted to say, I'd love to do that. I think it's what God wants me to do, but I can't because of my finances. And we felt like when we were so underwater in debt, we would have to make every job choice based on, does it pay enough? Not, is it the best thing for us? If we needed to do something different, if we wanted to have another child, if we wanted to whatever, we didn't want money to be the defining piece of it. Well, as soon as we got out of debt, we kind of sensed God directing us toward a whole different way of life in East Africa as missionaries. And it was so weird because we had to travel. We kind of got rid of our stuff and bought a little conversion van, and we traveled for a year raising support to be able to go do it. One of the things we recognized about our second month on the road is that we could have never said yes to that if we had left our debt in place. Because sometimes when you're just counting on the offering of a kind person or a church to be able to keep going, what you couldn't do is start already underwater. And what we recognize is that our yes from yesterday opened doors for tomorrow. What we had stumbled into was we had made wise decisions. Now, admittedly, some of it was trying to make up for some unwise decisions. But our wise decisions and little things had opened the doors for things that shaped us and groomed us and grew us into places we would never have. Can I just ask you this? Have you made decisions in your past that have closed doors for your future? And if you have, I can't change all that, but I can say, starting this day, what is the wise thing to do based on your past, your present, and your future? It will open the doors for your future. It will allow you the freedom. There are some people that they buy a house and the rest of their life they're a slave to it, because now if both of them don't work and if it's not pedal to the metal, if it's not run full out, every decision you'll make the rest of your life will be to serve that one decision. There are people who make decisions sometimes that say, man, we can live in anything. What I want is a life, not just where I live. Or maybe there's 100 other ways to do that. Maybe sometimes I get so committed to my career that I actually am losing the things or the ones around me that mean the most. And what I've done is a smart thing by pursuing something that'll pay me, but often the payback is not what I want at all. So maybe I did a smart thing, but not a wise thing, because sometimes you can do something that's not wrong, but it still be unwise. And I don't know where that is for you. I'm just looking back through my life, calculating, and I kind of say these questions, when I have used them, have served me so well, and when I haven't, I have so not served my family nearly as well. So here's where we'll kind of wrap things up. The maturity question is one that when we ask it, it's like a spotlight. It shines a light on a lot of our excuses. And most of us have excuses why we do what we do. Let me give you a couple. This will be how we shut down for the day. Here's one that I get a lot. I'm doing what I want to do, and why should I stop? Because I'm not hurting anybody else. There's people who watch this today that the truth is the same phone or the same computer or the same whatever you're using maybe is used for a lot of different purposes, and maybe there's some swiping that you don't need to be doing on your phone or some opening of websites that you don't need to be on, and part of your answer is, you know what, leave me alone, I'm not hurting anyone. When we ask that, is this wise to do? You go, well, no, it's not wise to do, but stay out of my business. For a lot of us, we purchase things, we do things, we go places, and they're not, hey, get off my back. I'm not hurting anybody. And that is kind of our excuse. Let me give you another one. I can handle it. Usually it follows this one, by the way. I'm not hurting anyone, and I can handle it. And you may really believe that when somebody says that the wise thing, and it's not, but you know what? I'm different. I can handle it. Most of the bad decisions made in life, we believe on the front end, I'm going to be okay. It'll be different for me. Let me give you another one. There's no law against it. I'm not hurting anybody. I can handle it, and I ain't breaking no laws anyway. Leave me alone. They're just excuses. Well, is it the wise thing to do? Shed such a light on those things. It makes these seem so flimsy. Let me give you one more. God will forgive me even if I do. And here's the crazy thing about all of these. They may all be at least partially true. I may not be hurting anyone, although you may be hurting you and you're an anyone. But I can handle it. There may be truth to that. There's no law against it. That could be completely accurate. Or that God will forgive you, and you're right, He will, that God is faithful to forgive. The problem is they're often partially true, and sometimes the partial truth doesn't tell the whole story. When we shine the light of, is it the wise thing to do, it sometimes tells us the partial truth. Maybe sometimes it says this, but I'm not hurting anyone, and the truth is, yet. I'm not hurting anyone yet. That my little flirtation with those things often gives birth to something far greater. I'm not hurting anyone yet. Immaturity says, I'm not hurting anyone. Maturity says, well, I'm not hurting anyone yet. Many of us, the worst days of our life, have been around feeling I'm not hurting anyone, but not having enough maturity to recognize that yet is coming. You know, if it's not you, you know somebody that certainly fits that bill. The problem is it's easier to spot it in them than it is in me. Maybe we can put it this way, I can handle it, but maybe the truth is I can handle it for now. And you'll find that in most of your life, that the biggest hurts, the biggest regrets, the biggest apologies, the biggest I wish I could do it overs, are things where we told a half-truth. Our wishy-washy excuses get blown away in light of, is this the wise thing to do in light of my past, in light of my present circumstances, and in light of my future hopes and dreams? And can I just say this? If you've got future hopes and dreams that will carry the water for your family, for the people you love, for the people that you don't want to let down, these questions will help you get there. I don't care if you're 14 or 44 or 84, there's never a time these won't serve you well. And so can I just say this? For your sake, what is the wise thing to do? If you start with, am I being honest with me? Really? And go to, what is the story I want to tell? and land on this third one. What is the wise thing to do based on my past experience, current circumstances, and future hopes and dreams? For your sake, it will give you the life you've hoped for, the life you dream of, the life you wish for. It's not automatic, but it is real. For the people you love the most, the greatest gift you could give them is not a bigger whatever, car, ring, house. It's not more. The best gift you could give them is a healthy you, and a healthy you will come from this question: what is the wise thing to do? And can I say this? For your sake, for their sake, and for God's sake, would you choose to answer this question well? Don't underestimate the value of what is the wise thing to do. We'll give you another one next week. Till then, have a great week.